All right, so section 8.2 is called quadratic intercept form. Now, most of what we're doing today, you already know how to do the math. We're just giving it a different name and applying it in a different situation. So, a couple of things you'll notice on the notes. On the left-hand side, you've got this box that says standard form of a quadratic. So anytime you have an x squared, an x, and a constant, we call that standard form. Don't worry too much about this a and b in front. It's just saying that your function could be 3x squared plus 7x plus 2. Or it could be negative 2x squared plus 17x minus 8. It's just saying that a, b, and c can be any number. They could even be 0. So you could have 3x squared. Well, let's just go with a regular x squared plus 0 x's, which would make no x values in the middle, and you could just have a 4. This is still standard form because your x squared, your x, and your constant are 3 separate terms. Now, what we've done in previous classes is we've taken a standard form quadratic, like x squared minus 3x minus 4, and we have factored that to change it from having x squared and x alone into parentheses. And when we do that, we call that intercept form. So if I took x squared minus 3x minus 4 and I factored it, I would end up with x minus 4 times x plus 1. It's the same function, it's just written in a different form. Different forms have advantages. Sometimes you want it in one form because it tells you something about the function that the other one does not. But you already know how to go from standard to intercept. And going the other direction, going from intercept form to standard form is even easier because you just multiply the parentheses together. It's so easy, in fact, we're not going to really worry about it today. Now, the reason we like intercept form is because once I get it in that form, if I go back to my f of x equals x minus 4 times x plus 1, once I have it written like this, these two parentheses tell me where my function is going to cross the graph. The first one, x minus 4, we solved that for 0, and x plus 1 we have solved for 0 to get two x values. Those x values tell you, x equals 0. What am I doing? I'm going too fast here. X equals positive 4 and x equals negative 1. When I graph this function, I've got a intercept at negative 1 and I have an intercept at 4. We also call these solutions. We call them intercepts. We also call them factors, right? These are just different ways of saying the same thing. But the point is, we know where I'm going to cross the graph. I don't know where the bottom of my function is just from looking at this, but I do know I am going to cross at negative 1, and I'm going to go back up and cross at positive 4. All right, so we like intercept form because it tells me where my intercepts are. So example A says f of x equals x squared plus 8x plus 15. I want to factor this and turn it into intercept form. So to factor, I make my big X, I put 15 on top, I put 8 on the bottom. I need two numbers that multiply to be 15 and add up to be 8. So that's 5 and 3, which means my function, f of x, can now be written as x plus 5 times x plus 3. That is my intercept form. Okay, that's this first part of the question. Now, the second part of the question, actually, maybe I'm going to highlight that. Intercept form is this part. Now, the next part of the question, it wants me to identify the x-intercepts. Well, I only have to look at my parentheses, and I know what my x-intercepts are. Those are the x-equal values that we always find when we are solving quadratic equations. In this case, x equals -5 and x equals -3. Those are my intercepts. Those are where this graph is going to cross the x-axis. If I were to draw an x-axis and mark -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I know that I'm going to cross at -5 and -3. Okay, example B. X squared minus 2x minus 8. When I do my big X, I put -8 on top. I put -2 on the bottom. I need two numbers that multiply to be -8, add up to be -2. Those numbers are -4 and +2. I know I'm going through this factoring part quickly, but we've been doing this multiple times this year. So I don't want to get hung up on that part of the lesson. So my g of x function, I can rewrite in intercept form as x minus 4, x plus 2. That tells me that my intercepts are going to be at x equals +4 and x equals -2. Remember, your intercepts happen at the opposite values of what you get inside the parentheses. Okay, now example C. If you are watching this video from another class, your teacher might have changed example C. I've got a -1/2 in front of my x squared. First of all, I don't want a negative in front of my x squared. I also do not want a fraction in front of my x squared. So I'm going to factor out -1/2, which means all of these terms are going to get divided by a -1/2. So -1/2 x squared, when I divide that, I end up with x squared. When I take 5x and I divide by -1/2, it's weird because excuse me, my number actually gets bigger. When I divide a number by a fraction, it gets bigger. So that 5x becomes a 10x with a negative in front because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. And then -8 divided by -1/2 is +16. So now I have something that I can factor. So I do my big X, I put 16 on top, -10 on the bottom. My numbers are going to be -8 and -2 because they multiply to 16. They add up to -10. So h of x can be rewritten as -1/2 parenthesis x minus 8 and x minus 2. So there is my intercept form. That's the first part of the question. Then I just look at my parentheses and I get the second part of the question. My x-intercepts are going to happen at x equals +8 and x equals +2. So now I have my intercepts and my intercept form. Now the second part of this is I don't have enough information to graph my entire function yet. So for example, A, my f of x function up here, I know where it crosses. I know that it crosses at -5 and -3. The problem is I don't know where the vertex is. I don't know if it goes down to -5 and back up. I don't know if it goes down to -10 and back up. I don't know if it barely goes underneath 0 and goes back up. But I do know where it's going to stop going down and turn back up. The nice thing about these two numbers is it's going to change direction right in the middle of those two numbers. So since this is -5 and this is -3, I know that I am going to change directions. It's going to stop going down at -4. I just don't know where at -4. But I do know it's going to happen at -4 because -4 is right in the middle of -5 and -3. Now, there's something cool about that information. I know that I want to find, not -5. I know the x value of my vertex. I know it's going to be -4. I don't know the y value, but I have a function right here that if I plug in an x value, it will give me a y value out of the function. So I want to plug -4 in here, and it's going to give me the y value. So I put it in my calculator, and if I was doing this at home, what I would do is in my calculator, everywhere I see an x, I would replace it with a -4. So I've got -4 squared plus 8 parenthesis -4 plus 15. I hit enter on my calculator, and I get the answer -1. So that means my vertex, I know it's in the middle, but now I also know it's going to be down to -1. So my parabola is going to go up to the right, and it's going to go up to the left through those 2 points. All right, let's do the same thing for my g function. G is right here. I know that it crosses at 4 and at -2. So I'm going to start by putting dots there. I know it's going to pass through 4, and it's going to pass through -2. Those are my intercepts. Now I've got to figure out what's in the middle of those two numbers. There's a formula right here for it. I like to just use common sense. The middle is going to be right there at 1. 1 is right in between -2 and +4. So I know that my x value is +1, but I don't know my y value. So I'm going to say x is +1. And to figure out my y value, all I have to do is plug that +1 into my g function. So I am looking for g of 1. So everywhere I see an x, I replace it with a 1. And it doesn't matter if I use my original function or my new function. I like to use the original in case I did something wrong. If I did something wrong and I plug my number into if these numbers are incorrect and I'm plugging a number into it, then I'm getting another wrong answer. So I like to plug it into the original function. So I get 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 8. I put it in my calculator and I get the answer -9. That's my y value of my vertex. So my y value is -9. My x value is 1. Now I know that my parabola is going to start there, and it's going to go up through 4, and it's going to go up through -2. Hopefully yours is straighter and looks more like a U than mine, right? Like we want it to come down and kind of look like a U. Mine looks a little bit like a V that got sat on, but that's all right. You get the general idea. Okay, H. When I look at my H function, I know, so I'm looking at example C right here. I know my intercepts are 2 and 8. So I'm going to put a dot at 2, and I'm going to put a dot at 8. Now, right in the middle of 2 and 8 is 5, right? Because 2 plus 3 is 5. 8 minus 3 is 5. So 5 is the middle. That's what I want to plug in to my H function. I want to plug in, I want H of 5. So when I look at my H function up above, I've got -1/2 parenthesis 5 squared plus 5 parenthesis x, which is becoming 5 minus 8. I put that in my calculator, and I get, let's see if I remember from the lesson in class, I think it's 4.5 because it's 9/2, which is 4.5. So this function, my vertex is actually above the x-axis. It's over 5, up 4.5, so it's right here. And my parabola is upside down, which makes sense. I should have known it was going to be upside down because I've got this negative number up here in front of the x squared. Well, that tells me my function's going down. So I connect the dots, and I've got my upside down parabola for h of x. Okay, on the homework, 2 things I want you to change. Number 2, I want you to change the question to be x squared minus 2x minus 15. And number 3, I want to give you a hint. You need to factor out a -1. So you want f of x. Your first step is going to be to factor out a -1. And then you can do your big X method, or if you remember the shortcut from the bell work the other day, you can do the shortcut. Either one will work for number 3. Come see me if you have any questions. Good luck on the homework.